dear friends, it's Carly, and welcome to another episode of the I Learned podcast. I am so glad to be with you. I'm so glad you're here with me, and thank you for joining me. I am very much in a deep sense of gratitude at this moment and wanted to flow the energy to milk it a bit. And I don't have like one big revelation to share. I feel like this revelation has kind of just colored my entire perspective of everything this morning, of just this deep sense of the flow and the cycles of life, and how, sometimes there are slow times and sometimes there are times where it feels like you're running so fast your legs are just going to fall out from underneath you. Like, there are both. And right now, especially as I'm deep in the astrology and working with the transits for the first time throughout this year, it seems like we're in a bit of a slow time, and that, like, a standstill where maybe we can even kind of see some pieces of our future that we want and that we know about, and that they are just on pause, so it would appear to us from our individual human consciousness. And the piece that like has been unfolding these last like couple weeks, it's a deep appreciation for these slow times, and like a deepening into what is it really for when your life feels slow, or like things aren't moving forward, or that they're on pause as far as you can tell. I personally have been seeing that it means that, that there are other cooperative components coming together and working out the steps of the process of whatever is unfolding, like wherever it is right now. If it's not in my world, if I'm not running through the action because I'm inspired and like naturally just it's moving forward and the pieces are clicking and just step after step after step, like if you're not doing that, if you're kind of sitting still and being like, should I be doing something? Is there more that I should be doing? Like, is it right to just sit here and like look out at this beautiful view and like listen to these birds chirping away in the morning sun, and just like Stella, like she's just like warming herself, just like having a nap. She's been awake for, a couple hours. It's nap time. And she's just lounging around, and like me too. And slow times, as far as I can tell, it's like that first piece of somebody else is out there working on it. Somebody else is holding the ball right now, and you're downfield, like making your moves and making yourself ready and available for when the ball is thrown to you and it's your turn to act. But sometimes, like, it's just not your turn. Like, and then you get into this space of like, can you wait? Can you be patient and like develop what I'm like learning to call the art of waiting, the art of resting? Like in those slow times, like, do you let yourself downshift and maybe even pull off for a pit stop, pull off in a rest stop, and really like do an overhaul and some maintenance and get the tank topped off and all that good stuff? Like, or do you run on a hamster wheel? And I'm very much like feeling back into my own past patterns, where like I went all the time until I burned out. And a lot of burnout is pushing against walls that aren't going to move anyway. Like we're doing things because we feel like we have to do things, but sometimes it's not the right time to be doing things. And really, like, you're wasting your energy if you're acting in a time when things are standing still and like you still have to do something. It's like, okay, fine, you can do something, you can do whatever you want, but just understand that that is just simply to entertain you, to make this time easier for you to take. It's not changing anything, right? Like, you're just pushing against a brick wall. You can do that all you want, but it's not going to do anything. And as I've seen in my cycles, like, burnout very much comes from way too much of that pushing on the brick wall, like doing when it's really not time to do, instead of embracing the slow times as opportunities for rest and recharging and recentering. And um, I was taking a look, like I'm recording this June 2nd, and I was taking a look at the rest of the retrograde periods for the year of 2022, and just kind of like looking at the cycles. And basically like the pattern I saw was like at the beginning of October, on October 1st, we have like um 7 planets retrograde. So right now, like as of today, June 2nd, 2022, we have Saturn and Pluto, or no, sorry, Pluto, just Pluto, because Mercury retrograde ends, and then it's a couple days until Saturn retrograde begins on June 4th. So yeah, like it's just beginning, but over the next like 4 or 5 months, we're going to have like one planet after another turning retrograde. And this will add to the brake pedal feel of like these slow times where, again, maybe you can see the path forward, but it's just not falling into place yet. Like there's a period of what might feel like waiting. Um, and so as I was looking, it's like the month of October is a bam, like it is a powerful burst of energy, because one after another, we have most of those planets, all but one, sorry, all but two of those planets will have turned direct by the end of the year. So in October, there's like 3 right in a row. Like Mercury goes direct, and then I think it's Pluto goes direct, and then Saturn goes direct. And then in November, there's 1, and December, there's 2, I think was how it was. Um, and so all of those turning direct, like, are going to take every ounce of what you've done during this quote unquote waiting period and will deliver some sort of manifestation that matches that investment of energy. And I'm feeling like very pulled into myself, very like turned inward. And like I've talked a lot lately about like reparenting my inner child, and very much like looking at that inner child, the pureness and the innocence of her desires and her wants in the world. Like, I mean, she knew at age 7 that she wanted to be a professional public speaker. And that path has led me to where I am today, where I have found my way to giving myself a platform on YouTube and on Anchor, and basically platforming myself just for the fun of it, just because I enjoy this activity of channeling energy through my voice. And to let myself have that, to like turn inward and ask the little girl inside me, like, what do you want? She wants attention. She is wired to be looked upon and to be okay with that. Like, she likes a big audience, you know? And it was funny. I went to my grandma's house for lunch last Friday for my brother's birthday lunch. And she, before everybody else got there, she was asking me like, "So, Carly, what have you been doing so far today?" And I was trying to explain to a woman who doesn't know that YouTube even exists, that I was live streaming the Friday morning before I went there. And so like she got to where she understood like what I was doing, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you just couldn't pay me anything to get me to go in front of other people and like talk and have them all look at me." Like, nope, I don't even know how you do that. And I'm like, it's like literally what feeds my soul. And that brings me to a recording I was listening to this morning from Matt Kahn from like 5 years ago on his channel. I just found him, and he has like a treasure trove of content and teachings available. But it was called The Karmic Return. Yeah, The Karmic Return. I'll put the link in the description of this for you. But it was all about how, like, he did end up talking about ego, and how, like, it can be really tempting, especially in like today's like new age, spiritual awakening. Like it's becoming mainstream, and with that, there's some pieces that maybe have been like taken in a direction that more mirrors the shadow of mass consciousness as it relates to this. And like my example is like the teaching and any kind of beliefs around eradicating the ego, like that the ego is bad, the ego self is like the villain in the story, and like we need to like shut it down and like be awakened. And that basically that's just like a big loop of self-judgment, and that the ego is not a bad thing. The ego is a structure, like a vehicle that can help us accomplish things in this world. And so it has me like really reflecting on little girl Carly and what it is that she wants. And like she wants attention, period. She's wired for it. She's good to go. Like every single day, like she's ready to get her attention today. Like good, like that's just between my Gemini sun and my Leo moon, like there is a very real part of the core of my energy that is energized by being seen, by being heard. And I don't think that that's by accident, like that drive. It's like, but I mean, especially where my Leo moon is involved, my Leo moon in the fifth house is involved. It's like, this is how I fill my gas tank. I've been told like I'm so committed or I'm so driven or like all of these things. But when it comes to this, when it comes to my YouTube channel and my podcast and like what I'm doing in those realms, it's like, this is how I fill my gas tank. So based on that, it's been really interesting these last like few weeks. I said in one of my videos about doing a media fast and like sources of information that you regularly look at to take a break. Like, not that you have to like burn a bridge or, never look back or anything like that, but take a break from ingesting that information and see what happens. And the interpretation that I took from it, and I don't even think I realized that this was what I was doing, but it definitely connects, is like there was a time about 3 or 4 weeks ago that I was reading my comments on my YouTube channel and I got triggered, and the response like was so easy to just say like, I'm gonna just fast off my comments for a while and see how that goes. Meaning that like there was a period there where I just like did not look at them at all. And what came as far as like, okay, so stop ingesting that information, like leave that out of the equation for just a little bit and refocus then without that distraction or variable. Like it's just not part of what you're doing. And it really like, I feel like I've reconnected in a big way to like, why am I doing this in the first place? Because it fills my gas tank. That's why I do this. That's why I open my mouth and I press the record button time after time after time. And like, let me tell you this, like for those of you who may be like, stepping into your creativity and resonating with like press the record button, whatever that means for you. But like every single time I do, right before, I am so filled with butterflies. Like, I mean, you would call it anxiety or excitement or nervousness or like just jittery energy, all over the place energy. Like usually I have to pee like 3 times in the last 2 minutes before I can record because like I just get so nervous that I think that's my body's way of like putting it off just a little bit more. Again, because I'm nervous, because there is like an apprehension of what if this is the time when it all falls apart and like I can't do it like I think I can do it. And there's basically like a process of self-soothing like every single time I press record still. And I don't know if that'll go away. It definitely gets easier and easier and easier and easier, so maybe hopefully that'd be cool. But in the meantime, like it definitely gives me these muscles of self-soothing. And that as I've taken a break from my comments and centered back into like, why am I doing this in the first place? I I feel like I've like been able to clear something that I wasn't quite getting to the heart of before. Like the comments, as far as like, this is kind of going back to that dissolving denial episode, like the comments, the commenters themselves, like they are not the point at all. Like the things that they say being so perfect to land so perfectly like on my particular wounds, that is, it's like the question that Dolly asked me, like, who do the commenters represent in your life? What do they represent? And the realization that came in, after a little while of kind of like detoxing off of the comments, is that they represent approval. I look there to see if I'm being approved of. And when I thought that thought, instantly the next thought that joined it was, and that reminds me of my parents. And feeling like I never really did get the approval of my parents, or that they just really don't understand like my particular way of finding value in the world or adding value to the world or whatever. And so like that root went so much farther back than I was previously aware of. And because of that, I have spent the last few weeks like doing some healing work around that deeper root, like that deeper sense of needing approval and wanting approval, because like those are two different vibrations. Needing approval is definitely where I was, and wanting, like more, sorry, needing to see the approval from others because I wasn't knowing my value in myself. And wanting approval to me feels different in the sense of like, at a certain point, like we are wired for connection with others. And in the grand scheme of things, I do want to end up surrounded by like-hearted others who resonate with me on a soul level. And I mean, at this point, I have to just kind of stop myself even here and acknowledge that that was an outdated thing I just said. Like, I want this to happen. It has happened. It has happened. Like, there are new people in my world who have found me through my podcast, through my YouTube channel, that have connected with me deeper through the Patreon Sacred Circles. Like, these people have made their way to me already, and that is only going to continue. I've if you're familiar with tarot, I've been drawing the Four of Cups lately, and this card I associate with kind of like your life is almost so good that you've gotten bored with how good it is, and you are of course ready for more, but in the waiting for more, there is this ability that we can cultivate and practice that is basically counting our blessings, like counting the abundance that we already have manifested, counting the resources that we already have at our disposal. And literally, no matter how much it is, like we can do this. If we are alive and if we are physical, like I had a whole, felt like a friggin' acid trip yesterday, even though I definitely was not dropping acid. But it was like this whole rampage of like a deep appreciation. It led to crying like these powerful, happy tears about this body that I have. And not in a sense of like, oh, it looks so good. I was sitting in a chair and I was feeling, I had my eyes closed, and just for the fun of like sitting in the quiet and feeling myself being supported by the chair, and like feeling myself in this physical space. And I just started to get this sense of like, this body, like it belongs to me. And it was such like a powerful, powerful manifestation of abundance. This body that belongs to me, that I can use to do this beautiful work in the world. Like I was like, I have all these legs, I have all these arms, and all of these fingers, and I have this voice, and I have these eyeballs. Oh my God, I love my eyeballs. I love my taste buds. I just, me and my taste buds are like BFF. I don't know if I have a more favorite body part than my taste buds. Yeah, it's like I was just really like having a spiritual orgasm over this body that belongs to me, that I get to live in, that I get to have such pleasure through. And that alone is like, I was sitting there for like 5 or 10 minutes, like counting my blessings for even like having manifested this body in the first place, having lived the life that I've already lived in the first place. Like I've already learned everything I've already learned. Like I've already come so far. And here I now am. And I like, if this is my right now starting point, like I am starting in such a good place. And what's possible from this starting point is literally limitless. It's literally infinite. Like we as humans can't even imagine how perfectly the universe can orchestrate things on our behalf. And when we are in a season of waiting, that is essentially what's happening. That we are readying ourselves, we're cultivating our inner soils, we're resting and filling our gas tank, we're tending to our broken equipment, we're like fixing the little pieces inside of ourselves that have gotten out of whack in this, the more faster moving energy of the last few years. And like we're being granted this slower time, not because it's a riddle for us to have to solve, like what am I supposed to be doing, I don't know what to do, but that especially like the North Node in Taurus like is asking and inviting that, like, at this moment really the best thing you can do for the highest good of the all is to deepen as much as possible into your own body, to come into your own body as much as possible. And that really like cycles of rest and quiet and isolation even can be really cathartic and conducive to you coming into your body. And I'm also going to link back to a couple videos, one called Divine Feminine Rising and the other called Embodiment, where I talked a few months ago about this and how, for me, coming into my body in a meaningful way a few months ago, it opened the freaking floodgates of emotions that I had not yet allowed myself to feel. Like all of the times in the past that I've steeled myself and been strong in the face of absolute inner devastation. And I've survived moments of heartbreak and not let a single tear fall. And every ounce of that emotion that had been triggered and not allowed to move still lived inside my body. There was a really real, a really, really real reason that I didn't want to go in here. Because if all that emotion is stored in my body, coming into my body, sinking in there means sinking into a sea of uncried tears. And the very beginning of my journey of true embodiment, like of my first, I took up earthing like a couple years ago almost, but I only did it for a few months and then it was winter and I really never did it again. But it definitely opened something in me that even had me exploring my body or open to the idea of exploring my body. And I would say that that was maybe like an unconscious embodiment that I was getting the flavor of or the scent of or like kind of the contact high from the planet. Like it was something that my body could feel that, yeah, this is a thing. This is nice. I can feel this. Interesting. I don't normally feel things in my body. So like that was kind of the initial waking up a couple years ago. But like a few months ago, I had meditation re-explained to me as the act of holding space for yourself. And I have been practicing for like 18 months or so. That's about how long I've been giving readings, and guiding other people as they've come to me and sought that out. I practice holding space for this other person and allowing whatever genuine expression rises from them, taking it into my system and practicing embodying unconditional love. And I have, like I said, I practiced this for like 18 months at this point, and this was a few months ago when a friend is explaining that basically meditation is doing that for yourself, doing that for your deeper self, your inner child, your inner infant, your primal self, your shadow self, your unconscious self. Like turning your healing magic on yourself and holding space open for you. You give this gift to everybody around you. And a few months ago, the way he described it, I was like, wow, I want that. I want that. And I stepped into myself, my body in a meaningful way. And it began, that journey of embodiment began with about 6 weeks of crying almost all day, every day. And those were the tears that my soul had accrued. I had a big ol' savings account of like uncried tears and unfelt feelings that I had personally denied within myself because they were not convenient or conducive to what my mind thought I needed in that moment. And I appreciate my mind and my ego for protecting me all along the way. You know, when we feel something that we aren't able to process or cope with, we send it to the body. So the fact that there are unfelt things inside your body is kind of par for the course, because that's just a measure of your emotional processing skills as you met the circumstances of your life and how it unfolded. And I think naturally, especially when you come into a incarnation like the one that I'm sure we're all floating in somewhere, is like we came to awaken our heart and heal our souls, and by that, you know, work on releasing this woundedness out of mass consciousness, out of the collective, just by doing our individual part. And the ego and the mind, like it knows what we can handle in the moment. And if it rejected an emotion and shoved it into a place where you didn't have to access it in that time, thank yourself for that. You know, this body full of unfelt energy that I had crammed in there was a blessing. Because at the time, I mean, for most of my years, like I felt like I can't take much more of this. I was on the edge of my life for a good long while. And thank goodness, thank goodness, thank my higher self, thank my mind and my ego and my self-protective instincts for not giving me any more. I couldn't take anymore. I can barely handle what you're letting through. Like, thank you so much for making it as manageable as it possibly can be. So, as I stepped into these feelings, it wasn't an endless emotion with like no end in sight. It truly was a matter of there is a process. There is a starting point of feeling the pain that was always going to be felt. I mean, when we deny it into our body, we're just putting it off for another time. So at some point, coming into our body and healing that pain from whenever, it means feeling the pain and allowing the pain to come through our system. But as you allow it to come through, it is not permanent. Pain is temporary. It is the definition of transitory. And you can watch it move through your system and out and transmute it into love and air and pure positive energy release it from your system, and grant anyone that ever comes into your aura then an invitation to do the same. There is a real transformation that happens when we sink into our body and allow ourselves to feel any residual pain that may be there. It doesn't last forever. It's a shadow of the valley of death. Like, you got to pass through it, but it's not forever. You walk through and it's a productive exercise. So thank you so much for joining me for this little pocket of energy and time. I appreciate your heart in this space. Until next time, dear friends, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.